good when they said unto me, let's go into the house of the Lord. Good to see everybody that was able to make it today. I know we have a few people that are sick and stuff, so that's certainly understandable. Well, as Pastor mentioned, sometimes people just choose not to, and that's between you and God. He did command us to be in the house when the doors are open, fail not to assemble ourselves, right?
That's right.
Right. So, speaking of assembling, many, many years ago, on this particular day, a bunch of guys got together. And what did they do?
Become traitors.
Yeah. I can't hear you over the sound of my freedom. Happy 4th to everybody. Well, actually, it's kind of it kind of fits into the message, doesn't it? Because we were talking about how the 12 apostles were often troublemakers and didn't listen well, were rebellious. Pastor, what do you always say? Stiff-necked, uncircumcised, right?
Yes.
Tackheads.
Yeah.
Well, George Washington and Samuel Adams, John Hancock, bunch of tackheads, right? They were pretty stiff-necked too, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we decided that Boston Harbor would look better decorated with tea. Brits didn't enjoy it much, but it went for us. But I thought about that before. We celebrate it as the birth of our country and as a national holiday. I'm thinking in Great Britain it's probably not quite so popular. But if all that hadn't gone and we were still colony, would slavery have ever been abolished? Would we have had the Civil War with London in charge? Probably not. But then again, I don't know, maybe it would have been earlier too, because the South was angry about Washington being too far away to think that they knew what they wanted. So could you imagine if our capital was all the way on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean? What that would look like? They would definitely be out of touch with what was happening here, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But we know that all of that did occur. We have the 4th of July today, but then we also had 2 world wars. And in both of those wars, Great Britain was about that far away. They were starving them out in the First World War, and in the Second World War they were actually preparing to invade. Operation Sea Lion, I think it was called, was Hitler's plan to actually invade Great Britain, to send people across the channel, like we did later on D-Day, going in the opposite direction. And our country stepped in to help them out through both of those conflicts. So, was God's hand in that?
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah.
a little,
Yeah.
oh, that was perfect. It made that ding. Just,
Yeah.
can you do that? That was perfect timing. Do that again. If his mighty finger just went
That's right.
right in the middle once in a while. I don't think he takes sides of football games. People pray for their favorite team to win. I don't think he really gets involved with that kind of stuff.
No.
The New England girl says the Patriots. But there's nothing biblical to back this up. My personal feeling is that when you have things that are going on like that level of evil, because there was no doubt the brutality. I mean, we talk about the Nazis a lot, but the Japanese were pretty horrible too.
Yeah.
Actually, if you were a prisoner of war of Germany, you had a better chance of coming home alive by percentage than you did if you were captured by the Japanese. They were very barbaric.
That's right.
The Germans were horrible because they were systematically evil. They had everything planned. They did it very well. Not that I'm saying that I admire anything they did. It was terrible. But they did it in the German way. They planned everything. Whereas Japan was kind of a lot more they just did. So obviously we had both of those sides that were extremely barbaric. And they were wiping out God's kids. right? And it was his chosen country.
That's right.
Right? It was Israel. It was the Jews
Yes.
that were being systematically snuffed, along with a lot of others that didn't fall into the realm that the Nazis liked. Won't go through the long list, but there were others if you study history. So about half, a little less than half of the supposed total count of people killed was the Jewish nation. And then all the rest fell into the other half. So would God just sit back and let that happen? No, I think that all of this, including us breaking away from Great Britain and becoming the country that we did, to have the technological might to fight that. Remember, we were fighting two fronts at once. It really was a world war.
Yeah.
We were the only country that was in both of those great struggles. Everybody else was pretty much mostly on one or mostly on the other, because that's all they could do. Not that I'm saying that they weren't given it all. They most certainly were. But we just had the available resource that we had been gifted from God
Yes.
to be able to manufacture the planes, the tanks, the bullets, everything that we needed to win that horrible struggle. Would any of that have come about if our whole country's history didn't look like what it did? I thought about that. Because as Pastor mentioned before the broadcast started, yeah, I'm kind of a really history nerd. Well, a nerd of everything pretty much, but okay. History too. And I see that my son has picked up a ton of that as well. And I think definitely in some measures he has surpassed me. Because when he was talking to the Navy recruiter, and they were doing stuff like asking him to go through a chart of ship identification. What is this? What is this? What is this class? He blew through all of them, and they're like, "Are you sure you weren't in the Navy before?" He's like, "No, I just study all this stuff a lot because I like it, because my dad put that into me and I went further with it." Well, you could kind of say that's a national thing in a way too. We started out as part of the UK, and they put that into us. I mean, they had the Magna Carta, right? That was the Bill of Rights for them. Hundreds of years before, we decided to kick them out and write our own Declaration of Independence and our own Constitution, our own Bill of Rights. So they handed that part down to us to move forward with. And we took that and in turn came back to the mother country and stepped up to help when it was needed. All right, so to pick up where we were at last week, right? Okay, so I was talking about Paul and Peter, right? Speaking of struggles and conflicts, we had a smaller scale here, but yeah, we had a little bit going on. In Galatians 2:11, Paul states very plainly, "But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to his face, because he was to be blamed." Wow. "For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles. But then when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision." So remember, we were talking about that. He's doing one thing in public, and he's doing something completely different in private. So Paul's calling him out for being a hypocrite. He's like, "Okay, look, you're telling me that you're associating with this group, but nobody can see you because you're not worried about it. It's secret. But then now, when others are watching, all of a sudden you're making a big deal out of it." And it says that it went back and forth so much that even Barnabas, let's read it, "And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation." So he got his head so confused that he didn't really know which side he was on anymore, or what was true. How many of us are in the same problem because we've got the wrong cable news channel on? and have gotten our heads turned around because nobody can agree. There's all this blah, 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 blah going on. Some of it's, yeah, okay. Some of it's probably true.
Yes,
Some of it's half true. Some of it's somewhat true. Some of it's a complete bald-faced lie. How do you know which one is which? Well, obviously, Barnabas didn't know either. He's confused. It said that he was because of all of this. Right? Dissimulation means controversy, chaos. It's everything that we're not supposed to be. God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but
Lord.
and
Sound mind.
a sound mind. Did Barnabas have a sound mind right here? He did not. Because of all this stuff that's swirling around. When I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, yike, I said to Peter, before them all, if thou being a Jew livest after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? So he's saying that you're a Jew and not even following that. Why are you trying to make the Gentiles Jewish if you can't even do it yourself when you are Jewish? He's mad. He's really mad. Like I was saying last week, I don't know if they actually, got nose to nose like the drill sergeant and the recruit, But if he withstood him to his face, what does that sound like?
Yes.
Sounds to me like they were in the same room and they were ready to go at it.
Face to face.
Yeah, face to face, mano a mano, right? And like I was saying before, we know that Peter had a bit of an anger issue, and as I mentioned, that if Paul, when he was Saul, if he wasn't just like the general manager, I guess you could say, of all of these arrests that were going on, but was going out and doing it himself, then that means he had to know how to fight too. Because if you're going to arrest somebody, you're taking them away for death, and they already know what's coming. You think they're going to go quietly? No, there's going to be a lot of punching, a lot of yelling, a lot of fingernails, a lot of gouging going on, right? So if that was the fact, then he knew how to handle himself too. So these two guys that are, basically amateur fighters here are getting ready to square off. It doesn't say that they actually punched each other, but I would bet if you were in the room, it was probably close. I bet it was close. He continues, knowing a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. Even we have believed in Jesus, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. How many were there? What was it, 613?
Yep.
613 things that you could stumble. 613 things that you can screw up. 613 things that you can go, oh yeah, that's right. I wasn't supposed to do that. Yeah. That's a whole lot. Right? So it wasn't the 15 that Mel Brooks had. Oops, I dropped one. 10 commandments. The 10 was the start, right? That was the overlook. That was just cliff notes of the law. Then you had 603 more to tell you, don't eat this, don't eat that. Okay, this one you can eat, but not on the Sabbath. You can do this one. No, okay, no, you can't do that on the Sabbath either. Nope, no working. Nope, no, not this. Nope, not any of that. If you did this and that, you got to restore back to the other guy double. It goes on and on. Anybody ever actually try to read half of all the stuff that was in the law? It's insane. But of course God knew that. He knew it was incomplete. He gave it to them because he was doing everything in stages, in steps, right? He had an ultimate plan, always. Right? I've written, what, 5? I think 5 books, 5 or 6. Anyway, writing's hard. It is. It's not easy, especially to try to come up with a decent plot that stays together. It has to have a good flow. Am I telling the truth, Tony? It's difficult, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Try to make any kind of sense. Hopefully pull everything together, and if it's not going to be a multi-book series, by the end you have to get all those little pieces of thread that you left hanging and try to tie them all together so that the reader doesn't go, huh, well, that wasn't much of an ending. What about this, and this? And you never addressed any of those, right? And they're scratching their head going, is there going to be a second book here to take care of all the things that this guy didn't fix? Well, if there's not, then you're not really a very good writer. But God already had all his strings lined up, didn't he? Yeah, it was a very complex novel. There was a whole bunch of characters moving around. There was all kind of subplots. But he never lost any of the idea of what all those things that are all weaving together had a beginning and an ending. Well, sort of. I mean, we're still in part of the subplot because we're still here. The world hasn't ended yet. He said, I'll be with you, right? With you. Lo, what? To the end of the age. To the end of everything. So we know that part hasn't come yet because we're still here. But all of those subplots he had going on, Ruth and Boaz, David, who made quite a mess, but was still called. Wow.
Man of the God.
Beloved of God. Even with all his mistakes. So how about that tangled plot line? Came down through thousands of years, including some people that weren't even Jews. Ruth. All came to one moment. A little baby, not even born in a regular building, but hanging out with livestock. It's basically the truth of it, isn't it?
Yes.
So that our redemption could come. Now that's a tangled plot right there. Try to keep all that together. You got all the judges. You got all the prophets. There was a lot going on there. It all came to that one day. But if we, while we seek to be justified by Christ, we ourselves also are found sinners, is therefore Christ the minister of sin? God forbid. So Paul and Peter had a disagreement. But Paul set it down and said, this is really what's going on. So there's a little bit of problem there, right? We got some rebellion going on, and then we get to Thomas. I mean, isn't there just a single one of them that we can say was dependable? They're all a little crazy here, aren't they? The other disciples therefore said unto him, we have seen the Lord. He said to them, except I see in his hand the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. All right, so this is what? This has to be after the resurrection, right? Because it had to be after the crucifixion. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any holes in his hands, would he? And he wouldn't have a big hole in his side either. So here's Thomas. And after 8 days, again, his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, stood in the midst, and said, peace be unto you. All right. Well, that's kind of cool, right? I mean, they weren't just hanging out in the room. It was like, we weren't expecting company, were we? We're looking at each other, right? Peter, go open the door. Opens it up and goes, oh, wow, Jesus is here. No. It said the doors were shut, right? He just warped in, right? Picard, one to beam down. He was nowhere, visibly nowhere, 1 second, and the next second, he's right there. Why wouldn't he just go knock on the door? Because that's what we would have to do. He's not limited by space. He's not limited by density of atomics. You can pass right through this. You can pass right through that. Pass right through concrete. Pass right through lead. Pass right through what? Uranium, I think, is the heaviest natural element, right? None of those hold him back. So he just warped himself in because he can. And said, peace be unto you. Then saith he to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger and behold my hands. All right, come here, Tom. Yes, I heard the whole conversation. You and the other guys rolling around and around. Like, here, look. See? See this big old hole right here. And there's another one over here. He probably wasn't wearing socks either, so I would imagine he could see the holes in his feet as well, wouldn't he? And reach hither thy hand and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. Now that part always creeped me out a little bit. I'm like, what exactly did that look like? Did he still have this giant cut in his ribs? He got jabbed with a spear.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And they typically have a fairly big-sized head on them. Right? Because they're designed to kill people quickly.
Yeah.
You don't want to keep sawing away at somebody when you're trying to kill them. You want to run them in and then go on to the next guy because it's war. So he still has this big hole. Now, so could he just reach in there and feel his liver? I don't know. I don't really know. But obviously there had to be something there because he said, stick your fingers in, have a look. Here's my proof. I am who I say I am. Well, he should have believed that he was who he said he was to begin with because he didn't even come through a door. He just and was beamed down, right?
Yeah.
But even with that, he's like, okay, since you guys were arguing back and forth about I won't believe until I put my finger, he's like, fine. Come on, manhandle me here. Okay, here it is. Here it is, right there. There's an actual hole. I looked through it and
Yeah, praise the Lord, Elder. Also, I was thinking about the scripture that says they're going to look upon him whom they have pierced. So he didn't have a body to show them,
right.
the pierced, the beauty to fulfill, that prophecy, what he's going to do. And plus, he ate food just like, he said, I'm not a ghost,
right.
A spirit. I mean, he ate with them too, so. So God can create a body to do anything.
Yeah, not like the cartoon skeleton where it takes a drink, right, and the water shoots out.
That's right.
It looks like a porcupine, a water blast coming out, right? It's like, no, that didn't go that way, did it? Right.
That's right.
Absolutely. Like you said, he had a physical, corporeal body that could be poked, manhandled, and lifted
Eat.
because he was actually there and eating. Yep. Right? So, given all that we just looked at from last week until now, if you were judging Jesus himself by his track record, if he was a political or popular figure, what would you think? Most people would say he was a complete failure, right? Think about it. He had governments chasing him. People were trying to stone him. Whole cities asked him to leave and never come back. He was mocked, belittled, betrayed, spit upon, tortured, and executed in the manner that only enemies of the state were killed. It was illegal to crucify a Roman citizen, right?
That's
Actually, it was even illegal to beat them
Yes.
without a trial. Because remember,
Paul.
yeah, we ran across that. Right, exactly. Paul and Silas, I believe it was, right? They were taken, and after. that was when the real trouble began, because they didn't ask any questions. It was after the prison door popped open because there was an earthquake because the angel came. Then he said, well, get out of town, we don't want you because apparently we can't keep you in the prison's not working, so just leave. And he's like, oh no, you beat us openly being Roman citizens. And they're like, oh,
They got afraid.
The mildest thing that would have happened to them would have been they would have got the same beating as what they gave to the prisoners. Depending on whoever their upper officers were and what kind of mood they were in, they could have had them executed as well. Because that's a pretty gross violation of Roman law. So that would not have ended well. So here we have all this going on. Yet in 3 days he conquered death, hell, and the grave, went to hell, took the keys forcibly, right, it says the keys of this world,
That's That's right.
from, who was holding on to it right then?
See?
Satan had him, right? Lucifer. He's like, okay, yeah, you know what? I think you had those long enough. My turn. Give them back. It doesn't say that there was any kind of a fight over it, does it?
No fight.
Doesn't say it took time. Doesn't say that he got into an arguing match.
King of
Doesn't
glory.
say that he said, we'll do rock, paper, scissors, and I'll give you the best 2 out of 3, and you get the keys, Jesus, if you can beat me.
The King of glory.
Or we'll arm wrestle. Let me see how big those guns are.
They didn't
No
put
competition.
medals in the room.
None of that at all, right? He just went down there and said, I want them now. And he's like, okay.
About it.
Because he already knew
Yeah.
that wasn't going to be any kind of a fight he was going to win.
That's right.
He then showed us his power over Satan was and is all-encompassing by humiliating him openly. Now, Satan does have power.
Mm-hmm.
But showing him that his power, showing the world that his power is mostly lies, intimidations,
That's right.
simple magic tricks, basically, right? Sleight of hand. In Colossians, Paul wrote, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. What was handwritings of ordinances? Those are orders, right? Decrees, laws, right? That say, well, something, whatever it was, but it says that it was contrary, which means that it was against the Word of God. Having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or drink or in respect of a holy day, or of a new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Christ. Now, blotting out handwriting of ordinances that was against us, spoiling principalities and powers. Doesn't say that there was any fight there either, does it? So, if you have a principality and you have a power, you have a group, don't you? Right? I mean, you have a large city that has a principality, as sort of. It's, we don't exactly call it that. We call it a municipality.
Mm-hmm.
So there's what? Mayor. I don't know what they call the assistant mayor, lieutenant mayor. I don't know. It's
Council.
lieutenant governor, but
Councils of them.
right. Yes. So there's usually, I believe, and in case the mayor's incapacitated, just like we have for the government, for the president, vice president, etc., we have an order of succession. So as you're saying, we have a couple of
City council.
mayoral whatever, right, and the city council, depending on how big the city is.
Yes.
That council is going to be pretty big too. I mean,
Yes.
New York,
Mhm.
Los Angeles, even Baltimore,
Yeah.
Boston. You got some pretty good cities you got to deal with. Dallas is huge.
Yeah.
So you got a whole big group here, don't you? It's
Yeah.
not one guy running the whole city,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, he'd be going crazy. He absolutely, certainly would never get any sleep. He would be constantly bombarded by, oh, I need this. I need you to think about this. Well, what are we going to do about this? This is 3 months away, but we need to plan now to make sure that happens. He's got to have help.
Yes.
Works the same way here. Whether it's lightness, God and his side, retinue, then we have darkness that's organized too. If it weren't, why would he call them princes of the air? Why would he say I have principalities and powers that I spoiled? Is he mocking his own group? His own, whatever, council, his own leadership? No, of course not. That would be a house divided, wouldn't it?
That's right.
So who is he mocking? He's mocking the evil group.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that there has to be more than one. So he took that whole council out and gave him a beating. That's what he's saying. So I'm going to kind of rewind a little bit. It's not exactly happening in order, but we already ran across Paul. But like I said, we're going to Rewind the tape. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. What kind of way?
Jesus' way.
What was he looking for?
Jesus' way. It's the type.
It was just called the way back then, wasn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Wasn't Methodist.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't Episcopal.
No,
Wasn't UPCI.
no,
Wasn't Pentecostal.
no,
All right. Wasn't Catholic.
no.
Wasn't, oh gosh, yeah. Never mind. You get it. There's probably hundreds, right? If you look at splinter groups of splinter groups, right? Yeah, there's an awful lot of supposed different theological points. Where did all of that come from?
Yeah.
Did it say that the apostles had 12 different churches because each one of them wanted to run their own? Nope. Did it say that they went around preaching whatever they felt like because it seemed better for them?
No,
In your studies, brother, have you ever seen that?
no.
Oh, no, me either. Elder, you ever seen that?
No.
No. When did all that splintering start taking place? 300-400 years later, right? You start reading back in the history of the Catholic Church and others that were powerful at that time. It didn't happen at the beginning, right? It said, when he told them, he said, you're going to go out, you're going to preach. They only had one unified thought, one unified message. He gave it to the 12 gave it out wider, right? So when did all of this busting up come about? Because we got stupid and started thinking that we could think. Don't change the message.
Don't change the message.
But some people didn't find some of those things convenient. They wanted to take things out of the Bible. They wanted to put things into the Bible. Well, doesn't it say in the book of Revelation, basically in modern vernacular, that anybody that messes with this book, all these curses are going to hit you? Right? You don't make your own thought. He doesn't care, really, honestly, in that regard. He does not care at all what our personal opinions are. It's the word or it's not. Okay, actually, I think
You
Doc
said
had-
it was like 300 years later before those things kind of split, but most of the New Testament is written letters to the churches where some strange theologies were starting to develop within the churches, and then, because a lot of the letters of Paul, but also John wrote letters, and he's having to correct them. So I'm not sure about it was 300 years later before some of this started. I think like immediate it's starting. Or something where we write and say, Paul was correcting and saying, well, some people are saying they're from Apollos and they're from Paul, and they're, so I'm not sure if it was 300 years.
Okay. Praise the Lord. Also there was a division between Paul and Barnabas later. He was taken away with that dissimulation with Peter, and
Yep.
and it was over John Mark, because Paul did not want John Mark to come, and Barnabas was related to John Mark, and he wanted him to go. But even with the splits and different things that took place, the word still got out. And even Paul, he was glorifying God that word is being preached. You know what I'm saying? The word of Jesus Christ is being preached.
Well, that was very true.
Yeah.
And what Doc said is correct. Okay. The way I see that, and I guess you could probably argue it both ways. When it started actually being canonical, or advertised as canonical, was in the 300s and the 400s, when stuff started actually getting written down and became the theory of the Catholic Church, like when they invented the Trinity, which they did. That is an invention.
Yeah, they did. Yes.
Before that, it was a deviation. It was a heresy. So Doc was right. Yes, it didn't take long for that. It was definitely springing up. There were things that were going. But I think most of that was, for the most part, dealt with as it was coming. Like he was saying, he was writing letters, and just like she was saying, am I of Apollos?
Yes.
Am I of the baptism of John?
Yes.
Am I of Paul? No. We're all of Christ.
Right.
But after that had already started, it starts getting bigger. And 100 or 200 years later, you see that grown so much that the way isn't the way anymore. Now it's not just a little disagreement or a splinter, it's this whole giant colossus that's taken hold, that now the Catholic Church exists. And everybody else is kind of getting pushed out of the way because the Roman Empire is starting to fragment and we're heading towards the Middle Ages,
And there's
where
a state
everything
church too.
really gets changed.
Yeah.
So that became the universal church.
Universal, yeah.
But does it say anything about dead people doing miracles and getting turned into saints? No, there's nothing in the scripture anywhere that says anything about that. Is there anything that says that there are three gods? No, those are aspects like we were talking about. If that was the truth, who's on first, right? Who's on the throne Tuesday afternoon? Are they going to cycle around? If there's three of them, I would think that there would be some kind of a power struggle going on here, right? Isn't a three-headed monster a freak?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
He also said that if there's division in the house, it isn't going to stand. How would that not be divided? If Jesus and his Father all of a sudden had a difference of opinion over something. I don't think you should do it that way. Well, I don't care. I'm God. I'm the Father. I'm doing it. Well, I'm the Son. I don't like the idea. He never said any of that. He said that my Father and I are one. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. All power is given to me in heaven and earth. So what? Did God abdicate? Did he step off his throne and say, you know what? I'm going to Tahiti. It's a magical place. Don't bother me. I'm going to that's an inside TV joke. I'm going to take a vacation. Go ahead, Jesus, you run things for a while. I need a break. No, there's nothing scriptural at all that backs that up. But all of those things became stuck in concrete in those versions of the Bible. They have a different one. They do have a different one. They even have books in there that we don't consider, like Maccabees.
Extra books.
Yeah, I don't remember all the extra ones, but I do definitely remember that Maccabees is in there, which is not by the King James and Council version considered canonical. So that just showed up. So who put that in there? Did an actual messenger from God come down and go, yeah, you know what, you guys missed one. I want you to put Maccabees in there too, because it's important. I want you to hold on to that. So, slice it in there somewheres in the Old Testament. And because when you guys were chopping up the King James Version, you goofed. I want this one too. Now we've got even not only difference of opinions, we've got different books, don't we? We got a real mess here. So, jumping back to Saul. We know this story, right? He had letters to Damascus that if he found any of this way, whether they be men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. And he came to Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven, and he fell to the earth, and heard a voice say to him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? Okay, and for time here, right, because I'm pretty much out. We know it was Jesus speaking to him, right? And he said, this is what you're going to do. You're not going to chase my disciples anymore. You're going to become one of them. And you're going to suffer a lot for my name's sake. But before you do that, you're going to go see this guy, Ananias, and he's going to tell you what you need to do. And we know that he did. Wow, this might be 3 weeks. Okay. So, we see that all these guys were a little wild, but you might argue Saul, other than maybe Peter, may have been the wildest of them all, depending on what your viewpoint is.
Zeal.
Like I said, being the fourth, we, to Great Britain, were traitors. Well, I mean, we weren't around, but the fellows that were very soon going to become Americans were still British subjects, but they were rebelling. So if you look at it from our side, they're heroes. We put up massive monuments and stick their face on the side of a giant rock cliff with chisels and dynamite. We make big buildings. We name a whole city,
Yeah.
Washington. Over there, they wanted to hang them. And I'm sure they would have done exactly that had they gotten their mitts on them. So it depends on which side you're looking at, doesn't it? Either traitor or hero. So Saul was a hero to the Jews
Yeah.
until he flipped. He did his full conversion here. He turned around 180 degrees.
Yes.
Now, to the Jews, he was George Washington, Samuel Adams, and we would say, from the other side, Benedict Arnold. He was condemned to death in absentia because he wasn't there, so they couldn't put him on trial as such, but we know that the Jews wanted him dead. So they condemned him to death and said, if you catch this guy, it probably wouldn't have been the rope, it probably would have been the cross. After their initial reluctance to trust someone who was so violently anti-apostle before, now all of a sudden, the Christians laud him as a hero. Wherever Paul went, he either caused a mass conversion or a mass riot. Often both in the same day. You know, I've used that one before, right? Now, if everything had stopped right there, I don't think that most people would hold the apostles up as any kind of a decent role model to be read about or emulated. I mean, look at all the things that they did poorly. Paul and Peter got almost into a fist fight. Peter denied Christ 3 times. Well, then we have the ultimate mess up, right? Judas hangs by a rope. And obviously a lot of this has to be Hollywoodized, but we've been watching The Chosen, which I think is very, very excellent. And they show that Matthew was basically a pariah even to the other apostles because he was still hated as a tax collector. Even though he was no longer a tax collector, they didn't get past that. There was still that ingrained racism to them.
Yeah.
That he was a sellout. He worked for the Romans. Yes, he did. It's true. That part was absolutely true. And I think they're doing a really nice job of showing how the other guys are trying to wrestle with that idea. And even with that, even the other apostles are getting back and forth, having some fights. You know, it's not just 12 guys all, huggy, kissy, rainbows and pink unicorns. They're people, just like us.
That's right.
And they don't get along with everybody. And they don't always have the same opinion either, do they? So they fight among themselves as well. Most likely, probably like how any of us would if we were stuck in a space with 11 other people for 3.5 years, right on top of each other, day in, day out. Well, hey, I was gonna eat that last ham sandwich. Oh! I see that Luke got it already. Man, Luke, did you? I thought you already had 3. Yeah, they were good. Right? Am I on it or am I on it? Yeah. 12 people stuck in a little hole, a little space together. What are they going to do? They're going to get on each other's nerves, aren't they? I mean, seriously, anybody ever go on a road trip, especially with kids along? Well, if we look at this, some of the apostles were acting like kids.
Right.
So imagine being stuck with them and having to deal with all of this. not great role models. You might say they were failures. Thankfully, the story gets better. I guess I'll be picking that up next week. We'll see what happens next.
All right. Amen.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
All right. Amen. Hallelujah.
Amen. We give God praise.
Amen. Hallelujah.
The teaching, amen, of our sister class, amen. Amen. We dismiss in Jesus' name, man. Short break.
Exactly. That's why it was funny.
Nice.
Uh-huh. Sometimes you have to just see if anybody's paying attention. Oh, yeah, thank you. You had me there for a second. That's right. Yeah.
This is Where's my dog?
How you doing?
How's it going, dog?
Tonight, where's everybody else?
Yeah. Yeah, Val came over and stayed Friday night with us, and all day yesterday with us, which is nice. Spending time with her, yeah. We finally got Jesse's address, so we wrote him letters this week.
Yeah.
As well. We read some more letters, and I bought a bunch of cards, so on days that were too busy to write letters, we put some card in the mail, so it needs to be from us.
Yeah, if you waited any longer, you would have been gone by the time we got a letter there.
Yeah, so it's really, how about you?
I don't know if they do any mail forwarding. What up, dude? How's it going?
Oh, that's good, yeah. That's okay, made it, for today, nothing really, oh, Ryan,
Yeah.
remember that Chris Avery, he texted and said that he was available to come over at 9 o'clock tonight. And I said, cool, we'll get the fire going.
Oh, wow.
Fire goes around the fire.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
He is, Chris is,
Okay.
so the church that I used to go to, Caton's Hall.
I don't know about the grill.
I know this.
Yeah, I had some problem with it yesterday. One of the burners that controls me with it. Definitely wasn't supposed to do that.
Trying to shine a little light on him.
You must have it.
Yeah,
Shout out.
yeah. He's a nice guy. Nice guy.
Shout out. Happy.
What's up? Yes, sir. Happy Trader Day.
It was in God's plan.
Ungrateful traders. Yes, I really do believe that it was, because if you look back on all the stuff that happened afterwards,
Yes.
that whole piece of history, that whole timeline would be completely different
Mm-hmm.
if those things didn't happen the way they did. That France didn't step in and help us out, which is kind of like the last time they ever did. But anyway, that's another story.
Yes.
And that we defeated the British, but
With the help
after
of God.
right,
Mhm.
right, with the help of the French. Well, actually Germans too,
Yes.
because it was Prussia back then. But
Prussia, yeah.
some of them came across, and actually there was a general from Poland actually as well, Pulaski. There's Fort Pulaski, Pulaski Highway.
Oh, yeah. Named up.
It's named after him. Yeah. So
Mary Land.
right, yeah.
Virgin Queen, Virginia.
Yeah, so if we didn't have help from the foreign countries that decided to step in, now, mostly they did that because France hated the UK, so they're like, oh, this is fun. Their colonists are rebelling, let's help them. Sharp stake to the eye, oh yeah, give it to the British. So, yeah, their idea wasn't entirely altruistic, but regardless of why they were doing it, they still did, and did that them taking that intercessory role
Mhm.
gave us our own country, which then set us up to help them.
Yes.
But 100 and whatever years later,
Mhm.
World War I kicked out.
And listen, you know what? If Hitler had learned from what happened to Napoleon Bonaparte.
Oh, when he invaded the Soviet Union?
The
Yes,
two fronts.
yes, yes,
Waterloo.
yes. Well, see,
England.
I had wondered about that a lot too. You know,
But the two fronts.
yeah, well, you know, it says that Satan entered into Judas and made him betray Jesus,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah,
So,
which we talked about last week.
yeah, so did God enter into Hitler and say, hey, go fight a second front, because he was so confused to start with, because he knew then that would divide him enough that he could be defeated? If he hadn't invaded the Soviet Union, I don't know how that would have gone.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if he had all his forces concentrated just against us
Oh, yeah,
and Great Britain,
Mhm.
I don't know if he would have won the war, but he probably could have gotten to a point where we would have said, you know, that's enough. We'll sign a peace agreement. You know, like basically what happened with North Korea and South Korea. We didn't actually invade them and destroy the capital and all that and take over North Korea. We just signed an armistice. We said, okay, this is 3.5 years. This is enough. We've killed enough people. Let's stop.
And the comparison of the two, because I think during the Napoleon Wars, there were like two Napoleon Wars, one and twice. He was released,
Yeah.
he got out of prison.
Yeah. He was on Elba,
Yeah, he was
the
on
island of
Elba.
Elba.
And he
Yeah.
able to get out and
Yeah.
then fight again. And
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
and Waterloo at that time.
Yes.
Waterloo was.
Yes, that was his ultimate defeat.
The
Yeah.
same thing with.
By the Brits again.
And a lot of the wars that they have, they were split, like the North and South Korea,
Mm-hmm.
like Vietnam. Like, all of
Yes.
them, was it East West.
No, that was actually North and South Vietnam as well. Yeah. Yeah, because it was communist on the top half. Yeah. Yeah. Funny that both of those countries, the top end was the communist side.
Mm-hmm.
Strange.
Mostly, yeah, just like North Korea.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I mean, not that. Well, kind of heading towards communism in
Yeah, I can tell you.
some ways, but at least we're not there yet. But
Mhm.
we split North and South too during our Civil War.
Oh, yeah, definitely, sure was, yeah. Brother against brother.
Yeah, brother against brother. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
And they were kind of vicious.
there literally were members from the same family that were fighting on both sides. Yeah.
And it was vicious
Terrible.
too. I think it was vicious in that how they starved some of the people and stuff like that. Their prisoners, they didn't treat prisoners right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that was, I mean, that's.
Prisoners on both sides
both sides
were
were doing it. That was
treated
bad.
pretty poorly. Yeah, that was certainly bad.
Yeah.
Well, and then I mean, well, it also depends on which way you look at this too. But what Sherman did,
Yeah.
yeah, he said to Lincoln basically, give me a big army and turn me loose, and I'll burn my way from here all the way to the ocean, and I'll go all the way through Georgia to do it. And so he burned Atlanta to the ground
Yeah, definitely.
and went through Savannah and attacked there and burned a lot of that through Richmond. Yeah, yeah. So some people regard him as the father of modern total warfare.
Because that's very
That
similar
you
to like
leave nothing behind.
that movie with Mel Gibson, The Patriot.
The Patriot. Yeah,
Remember
yeah,
how
yeah, yeah.
all of it was historically based, but they burned those people in the church.
Oh, yeah, oh,
They
yeah.
probably
That's
had
right.
a
That's
lot
right.
of situations like that. That broke his heart
things
when
like
he
that.
saw that
Things
his-
like that
the
happened.
people
Yeah.
And women and children burned,
Yeah.
you know, in the church. You know, that's
Well-
really vicious. That's really evil.
Yeah, yeah. Off the top of my head, I can't say that I know if anything like that happened during the Revolutionary War, but I know that the Nazis definitely did, because
They did.
I saw photographs. What was I looking at? Some website. A few days ago. It was only a few days ago, where they had locked a bunch of Jews. At least I think they were mostly Jews. You know, the Nazis killed. Yeah,
Well, wow.
like
Really brought to play.
like Schindler's List. Yeah,
Schindler's List.
they killed gypsies.
Yes.
They killed homosexuals.
Yeah.
They killed political rivals. Anybody that spoke out against Hitler and the government.
He didn't like blacks or anything.
Oh, what's that?
He didn't like blacks or anything, other races.
Yeah.
Remember the Olympics, they lost?
Oh, Jesse Owens. Oh, yeah. Well,
Like that.
yeah. Well, I don't.
That was a pride thing.
Yes, that was definitely a pride thing. Yeah, yeah. They were humiliated that the Aryan race wasn't the top of the pile. That he was faster than their runners. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. The 36 Olympics, Jesse Owens. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually fought in World War II. Too Owens. Yeah, he was a soldier. He was a soldier. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So this photograph was horrendous. The American army and the Russians were closing in on concentration camps, so they started pulling back. Everybody was in there to try to cover their atrocities, and they had put a bunch of them into this big, I don't know, it was like a kind of a cross between a barn and a factory, something of this big structure, and lit it. Well, all the people in it still alive, just lit it.
And then the mass graves too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Gas tank.
yeah. Yeah, so these were World War II photographers that were in the building
took pictures,
before
yeah.
the bodies had even been removed. They were just all, burnt and twisted and all, just what fire does, right?
Yeah.
And they were photographing all of this to make sure that, nobody ever said, oh, well, that never happened. You made that up. It's like, really? Then you tell me where this photo came from.